The best way for a story to be told is through the world and the lore. Hello friends, before we get started with the video, let's discuss the definition of lore and how it's going to be used in this iceberg. Lore is defined as history, legends, and background details, both physical and not, that make up the world of a game. This definition is rather broad, but essentially it means that I'll be discussing background details and elements in a game that can be learned but are not part of the main story. Yes, some of these lore pieces will connect back to the main story, but they're there as a way to flesh out the world. All games are eligible for this iceberg, but I do have a few rules that I'll be following and occasionally breaking. First, lore cannot just be the main plot. Second, I won't be covering a game more than twice on this iceberg, unless it absolutely needs it. Third, I will be covering topics that are more theory than canon, only if there's enough source material to make it realistic. And finally, I won't be covering FNAF, sorry that game would take years to fully cover. That's everything I wanted to say. Also leave a comment below on what games, moments, or pieces of lore you want me to add to the iceberg. I'll be taking user suggestions as we go. Now let's start our descent. This is the Disturbing Video Game Lore Iceberg Explained, Part 1. The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim has some of the deepest and most intricate lore presented in a video game. There are hundreds of books that the player can get lost in the game. Each book details lore pieces that you couldn't find otherwise, adding to the world. Of all the pieces of Skyrim lore that caught my attention, the Night Mother is one of the most interesting and darkest. A guild of assassins known as the Dark Brotherhood is headed by the Night Mother. She appears to them as an important spirit whom they cannot directly interact with. It is said that when someone wishes death upon another, the Night Mother hears the call and passes it along to a member of the Dark Brotherhood. This message is sent down until an assassin is selected. The assassin will then make contact with the person and form a contract for their death. There's a lot of speculation about who or what the Night Mother is. She appears as a phantom only to those with an exceptional circumstance. In this form, it's still hard to figure out what she might be. A phantom, spirit, a deity. These are all ideas formed around what she could be. One of the most popular theories in the Elder Scrolls universe is that she was a dark elf woman who Sithis contacted. Sithis is the deity who represents emptiness and the void. He's represented by a skeletal monstrosity. During the era of the downfall of Morag Tong, an assassin organization that worshipped Sithis, a respectable member of that organization was contacted by Sithis. He appeared to her in her bedchamber. Before this, he had told her of his displeasure with the Morag Tong, claiming that they were not sending enough souls to the void. The night that he visited her bedchamber, he begat her 5 children. She cared for the children for 2 years. At the end of those 2 years, she murdered her children to send their souls to the void to be with their father. This was the mission she was given by Sithis. The villagers heard about this atrocity and set forth to take their vengeance on her. They murdered her in her home and then set it ablaze. The home was burned entirely to the ground, and the body was left in an unmarked grave. The villagers mourned the children as the smoke rose into the air. 30 years later, a man was accosted by the voice of the Night Mother. She told him to build a new guild, one that was created for the sole purpose of sending souls to the void. This was the creation of the Dark Brotherhood. They would be headed by the Night Mother, but they would worship her as well as Sithis. There is a lot of lore across the Elder Scrolls series. The part I find the most interesting is how the lore can be different based on the part of the world the player is in. Lore is different in Skyrim than it is in Oblivion. These two games take place in different parts of the same world, so of course the lore would be different. The Night Mother is a figure that I believe stands out. She had to commit the ultimate act of evil to become an evil spirit. The Dark Brotherhood has a lot of disturbing lore surrounding them. More we'll see as we continue down the iceberg. Portal is a duology of games created by Valve back when they still made games. They are puzzle games that created the interest in portals that have permeated through video games for a while. They were both well received upon release. In the Portal games, you play as a girl named Chell. Chell is awoken in a chamber. A computer voice then gives her tasks. This computer voice is called GladOS. She will be the only voice you hear throughout the entire game. She will be your guide to the tests that you will need to complete. Right from the beginning, the world of Portal has an uncanny vibe to it. You are the only human in these very clean testing areas. There are windows where you'd expect to see scientists monitoring you, but those are all empty. This is because of the voice that you hear. Sometime before Chell was selected for testing, GladOS had been activated. She was an AI that was supposed to run several functions for the company, Aperture Science. When she was activated, she killed almost all the scientists with a deadly neurotoxin, as her morality cores were faulty. GladOS starts friendly and cordial with Chell, but slowly loses that over time. It isn't until Chell breaks free from a lift heading into an incinerator that Chell finds out exactly what is happening. There were signs along the way, but you could miss those if you weren't looking super closely. GladOS is defeated by Chell in the first game, and then is accidentally reawakened in the second game. Portal 2 expands heavily upon who GladOS really is. She was created by Aperture Science to help run the facility, but more than that, she was infused with the soul of a person. The right-hand woman of the man who ran the company. Her name was Caroline. A person's soul was trapped into a robot body, forced to conduct testing for the rest of her existence. It sounds like a truly horrific end to a person. There are also several hints that she was forcibly inserted into GladOS, as originally Cave Johnson was supposed to be fused with the AI. Cave Johnson would meet his end earlier due to moonrock sickness. GladOS is an imposing figure, and one who has had a stranglehold on the gaming community since her creation. Her design is somewhat unsettling as well. A prevailing theory that has been presented says that she kind of looks like a woman hanging upside down, bound, and gagged. Could this be a representation of the eternal hell that Caroline is trapped in? She's forever trapped in GladOS. Well, except for when she's not. Portal is a series that has a lot of lore surrounding it. The ending of Portal 2 has Chell leaving the facility, which sounds great, except when you realize that this is in the same world as Half-Life. She was thrown from one traumatic world and into another. Bloodborne is a game that carries more disturbing lore than the entirety of this iceberg by itself. I could have grabbed at any of the disturbing aspects of the world, from the abominations that exist there to the great eldritch beings that govern the world. But I ultimately decided to follow a specific piece of the lore. Bloodborne, like any other Souls game, has lore that needs to be searched through to piece it together. This means that the story is presented through item descriptions, writings that you can find, and NPC dialogue. There are a few pieces that are told to you, but most of the story is cryptic and vague, which is the perfect way for a game to display its disturbing lore. The whole plot of the game has you playing as an unnamed hunter going out into the world. Your purpose isn't clear for most of the game. What is clear is that the world seems to be dying or already dead. This is from the presence of the Great Ones, H.P. Lovecraft-inspired beings that secretly govern the world. The Old Ones yearn for children, and yet they cannot have them by themselves. According to the item description of the umbilical cord item from the game, every Great One loses its child, and then yearns for a surrogate, and Odin, the formless Great One, is no different. To think it was corrupted blood that began this eldritch liaison. The Great Ones want children, but for reasons not elaborated on, they can't have them. This is a repeated theme throughout the story. You find abominations created from the fetuses of the Old Ones. Corrupted monstrosities also roam freely. On the night of the blood moon, there's a terrible event that descends upon the land. On a note found in Byrgenwerth, another piece of lore found in the game reads, "When the red moon hangs low, the line between man and beast is blurred, and when the Great Ones descend, a womb will be blessed with child. The red moon reveals the creatures not seen before. It also brings about forced pregnancies in women chosen by the Old Ones. These forced pregnancies result in abominations being born of the unfortunate chosen women. There are several women in the game that you can find reacting to this atrocity in different ways. Some will hide away, disgusted by the creature that spawned from them, while others will treat it like a gift from the gods. There's something so disgusting and disturbing about an eldritch god coming from a place unknown, forcing themselves on a woman, and then forcing them to birth their children. The body horror, the implications, and the absolute disgust of it all. This is where Bloodborne shines in the horrors of its world, and the connections to our own. Spinal Breakers is a crosshair shooter arcade game from 1990. The game isn't one that I've seen many are familiar with. It plays similarly to other arcade games like Cabal and Nom 1975, but with a futuristic backdrop. You play as Captain Waffle, who must travel through time after the world was set on a reverse axis which made time travel possible. The end of the game says that humans had built a race of servants known as hill droids. These droids were docile until a series of nuclear bombs went off all over the planet. The nuclear chemicals infected the hill droids, turning them into mechanical parasites that can infect any living host it comes into contact with. The nuclear disaster, along with the new hill droid infection, sent humanity into space. At the same time, the world had reversed its spin, and now the hill droids were traveling through time to destroy humanity. This is where the game starts, with Captain Waffles going into different levels themed after different places in time. There are levels based on World War II Germany, historic China, feudal era Japan, a dinosaur stage, ancient Egypt, and America right before the nukes went off. The story is nonsensical at best, but the part that I want to discuss are the various endings. Hill Droids is an arcade game. Arcade games are notoriously hard, and not only that, but the devs wanted some replay value in their game. Their solution was to give different endings based on how well you did. If you were to let the timer run out once during your playthrough of the game, you would get a neutral ending. This ending has Captain Waffles returning to his wife and kid and finding out that he has been infected with the Hill Droids virus, turning him into a mindless killing machine. Presumably, he kills his family here. The good ending has him return safely, but nothing beyond that. This is the canon ending, but there is one more ending. The bad ending. In the bad ending, which you only get if you use to continue during your playthrough of the game, you will get the worst case scenario. Captain Waffles returns to his space station and finds that both his daughter and wife have been infected by hill droids, and now they are the killing machines. During this ending, the screen goes black with the sounds of 2 gunshots firing. There's a short pause before a 3rd gunshot goes off. This is an incredibly bleak end for an arcade shooter with a man named Captain Waffles as the protagonist. And I can't imagine playing this as a kid and getting this ending. Majora's Mask is a game with more dark lore than any one game needs. It's one of my favorite Zelda games, or video games period. The way it blends dark themes with the adventurous spirit that we're familiar with creates something wholly unique, even with all of the reused assets. This whole iceberg could be pieces of lore or moments from this game. There are far too many scenarios to choose from. Instead of going through every possibility, I'll instead use a few scenarios that encapsulate one specific aspect of the game. How the people of Termina deal with their coming demise. In Majora's Mask, Link is sent on a journey to find the 4 giants who can stop this moon from crashing into the town. It will level everything and kill everyone. The game has a 3-day cycle system that Link has to traverse through to complete his mission. If you were to talk to the NPCs on different days during the 3-day cycle, you'd get different responses. These come from the fact that the moon is slowly encroaching each day. With each day that passes, more and more townsfolk start the stages of denial. The lore piece I specifically want to talk about is the NPC responses on the final day. As the moon approaches, different NPCs will be doing different things. The guards in town will be on the verge of tears, but will stand guard as they feel they must serve their duty. There's a sword instructor who a day prior told you he would cut the moon in half and save everyone. He can be found crying in his secret room in his house, saying that he doesn't want to die. This extends to many other people in town, but the one that is the darkest, in my opinion, doesn't take place in town. The Romani sisters run a ranch just outside of Termina, and they sell milk there, as well as some alcoholic drinks. If you go talk to them on the third day, and if you save the little sister from the aliens, you'll see a very sad scene. The older sister, Cremia, is talking to Romani, the younger sister. She tells her that she can try the alcoholic drink and sleep with her that night. She knows that the world is going to end and doesn't want Romani to have to live her last moments in fear, and letting her get drunk because she'll never be of age to do it normally. There are a few more instances that are darker than you'd expect of an E-rated game, but I'll cover those later as we get to them. This moment is likely to leave a bad taste in anyone's mouth. Pikmin is a game created by Nintendo about a character named Olimar who lands on a strange planet. He needs to recruit the help of these little guys called Pikmin to help him rebuild his spaceship so he can fly home. The planet that Olimar lands on isn't named in the first game, but it becomes very clear where you are. To find the pieces required to fix Olimar's spaceship, you'll be throwing the Pikmin and having them carry the stuff around. It doesn't take long before you notice that all of the items look familiar. This is because the planet that Olimar has landed on is Earth. Well, a version of it. This Earth has seen the complete extinction of the human race. There's no mention of when they left or how they died out. They're just gone. Like they were never there to begin with. Only, they left behind a lot of stuff. Bottle caps, batteries, and other items can be found scattered around the planet Olimar explores. This explanation was given by the game's creator, Shigeru Miyamoto, who said that the game took place on Earth 250 million years in the future. Which could make sense, but not everything is that badly decayed. Over millions of years, most of these items would practically be dust by now, or at least you'd think they would. There is one element that points to what might have happened to the humans. In the first Pikmin game, Olimar's Geiger counter goes off. This could mean that there was a nuclear fallout of some kind. This could have led to the immediate evacuation of Earth, or maybe it led to their end. The world of Nier is complex, dramatic, and very depressing. Most players can play through a Nier game without having to know too much about the lore to enjoy its story, but if you know about the lore, the game is expanded beyond its horizons. Nier Automata has many side quests that add to the overall disturbing yet intriguing lore of the Nier universe. One such quest isn't necessarily a quest, but is creepy if the player decides to follow through with it. If the player takes the time to fully level up the weapons in Nier Automata, weapon stories will appear. These weapon stories reflect the wielder's feelings as confirmed by A2 when she receives 2B's sword in Route C. Cruel Blood Oath is a sword to be confined as requested by the commander. Just as upgrading the weapons are optional, so is obtaining this sword. Cruel Blood Oath's weapon story reflects a twisted love story about loving someone who the sword wielder ends up hurting in the end, and distancing themselves afterwards. Many believe this story to be a reflection of 2B's love of 9S, and how her being close to him ends up hurting him more than helping. Emil Heads is a melee weapon the player can obtain after defeating Emil. As expected, this weapon describes Emil's memories of being spawned on Earth and witnessing machine life forms and an android wearing black that he has a feeling that he's met before. These memories are written in a diary format with a date added to each. This weapon's story vaguely alludes to the previous game and who Emil really is. Most of the weapon stories, if not all, are incredibly interesting and a great reward for leveling up a weapon of your choice. Nier Automata has many more depressing side quests such as gathering keepsakes and the wandering couple, but Amnesia is a disturbing side quest that can be easily missed or not fully completed. Amnesia is a side quest that is exclusive to 9S. A Resistance member hiding out in the city ruins asks for help finding who killed her friend. She claims to have been hit with a massive shockwave that caused her to have no memory of events prior, but that her broken pod might have recorded something. Once 9S hacks into the broken pod, a picture of someone in a red hood is seen stabbing the Resistance member's friend. 9S and 2B head back to the Resistance camp to question the woman wearing a red cloak. From here, 9S and 2B are sent out to the desert to find Jackass, who states that she bought the cloak from a red-headed woman, the same woman who requested assistance in the first place. Once back in the city ruins, the red-headed Resistance woman is uneasy at suggestions that the red cloak was originally hers and asks 9S to hack deeper into the pod. Deeper in the pod's databanks, a photo of the Resistance member in a red hood standing over her friend dead is revealed. The Resistance woman then has a rush of her lost memories. She is a Yorha Type E, an executioner model. She hid within the Resistance to execute traitors and deserters, ultimately killing her friend. Unable to live with this guilt, she erased her own memory. With her memory restored, she begins to go insane, and 2B and 9S are left listening to her quickly losing her mind. This mission also reveals the Type E model to 9S, a major foreshadowing. Nier Automata has no lack of disturbing and heart-wrenching side quests. It is highly recommended to play through them yourself to really be immersed in the perplexing world that is Nier. The Red Dead Redemption series has a plethora of hidden lore that players are continuing to discover to this day. One such piece of lore that constantly draws players in is the Strange Man. The Strange Man appears in both Red Dead 1 and 2, and just as the name implies, he is indeed a strange man. In Red Dead Redemption 1, the Strange Man appears as part of the side mission called I Know You, that is only available to John Marston. John meets with the Strange Man 3 times, once in each territory of the game, with the last location being very important in foreshadowing John's future. During each mission, the Strange Man answers John's questions in vague and cryptic ways. The Strange Man asks John to run errands for him twice, once to stop his friend from cheating on his wife, and the second to visit an old nun who is raising money for charity. Both missions allow you to make a good or bad decision. During the last mission, John meets the Strange Man at Beecher's Hop. Here, John questions the Strange Man on who he is and where he's from, to no avail. All while the Strange Man talks about how fine of a spot Beecher's Hope is. Frustrated, John shoots the Strange Man as he walks away, 3 times with no bullets hitting him. It is alluded to that these 3 shots represent 3 deaths: John's, Abigail's, and Uncle's, as their graves are later placed in the exact spot as the last mission. In Red Dead Redemption 2, the Strange Man is a cameo rather than a mission. As Arthur, you can find the Strange Man's cabin in Bayou Noir, Lemoyne. Here, Arthur will find an unfinished painting of the Strange Man that slowly becomes more complete as time passes. There's also a poem about Jimmy Brooks that changes if Arthur decides to spare him or not. Unfortunately for Arthur, the painting only becomes finished once John's story begins. Once John enters the cabin, he is greeted with the completed painting of the Strange Man. If John stands in front of the mirror, the Strange Man is seen standing behind him, but is nowhere to be found if he turns around. The cabin is also filled with paintings that reflect if John has high honor, eagles and bucks, or if he has low honor, vultures and coyotes. In the cabin, there are a few mysterious notes painted on the walls. A few of them allude to the Strange Man watching the player as Arthur travels through his journey. From snow to the cave appears to be one of the notes about the journey. The most interesting note in the cabin has to be, I offered you happiness for 2 generations. You made your choice. Many believe that this note is referring to the cholera outbreak in Armadillo. If John visits the general store in Armadillo, he notices a familiar yet strange portrait of a man. This portrait happens to be the Strange Man, and the store owner, Herbert Moon, is the only one unaffected by the cholera outbreak. If John loots Moon, he finds a note on him stating his daughter is pregnant, possibly alluding to the two generations. In the note, Moon's daughter states that she will pray to the god her father thinks hates her for marrying a Jewish man. She also says that his infinite wisdom will make her father see that she is not a sinner. This could point to her father just being religious, but the Strange Man has also foretold future events and has known more than any stranger should. It is presumed that Herbert Moon made a deal with the Strange Man, thus saving him and his family from the outbreak. The Strange Man is all that his name encompasses, and players are still trying to figure out just who he is. Some believe that he could be God or Satan, while some are fine with not knowing, as it keeps his eerie caricature fresh. Regardless of who or what the Strange Man is, he will always be one of Red Dead Redemption's most strange. The Fallout series of games are ones that you can expect to see a few times on this Iceberg. The games made by Bethesda and the ones not made by them are chock full of hidden lore and secrets to discover. Most of these secrets are found through notes, data terminals, radio signals, and environmental storytelling. The world of Fallout takes place in the future 50s post-nuclear war America. Specifically, Fallout 4 takes you to the Commonwealth, where you are looking for your son after being awoken from a cryogenic sleep 200 years prior. In Fallout 4, there's a vault numbered 75, which has one of the most disturbing backstories I've seen in this game. Vault 75 is located under the Maiden Middle School. It's a strange place for a vault, but it was placed there on purpose. This vault, like many others, was set up by Vault-Tec to test on human subjects. Going through the various terminals and notes in the vault, you'll find out about the true purpose of the vault. Before the nuclear war started, Vault-Tec was advertising this vault to families in the area. They were claiming that it was a safe space in case of a nuclear war. They even paid families to register there. When the nukes inevitably dropped, the families were rushed to the vault. According to the logs, they all made it there in one piece. Once inside, the kids were ushered into their own area, while the adults were sent into another room for orientation. This was a lie, and every parent was executed on the spot by Vault-Tec security. Then began the fun part. The test of the vaults was the refinement of human genetics. Tests such as selective breeding, hormonal testing, and genetic modification were only the tip of the iceberg for this vault. This testing was done on children for generations, starting with the first to enter the vault. Once a child turned 18, they were sent to graduation. What happened at graduation depends on whether they showed promise or not. The kids who were smart and talented were harvested, but what exactly that meant was never stated. While those who showed some promise were added to the staff. Those who showed no promise were executed, like their parents before them. Their bodies were then disposed of in an incinerator. There are a few theories about what happened in the vault before it was shut down by a riot. One of those is that they were harvesting organs from the perfect kids, while others believe they were trying to create an army of super soldiers. Either way, it's pretty disgusting what they were doing to these kids. But that's Vault-Tec for you. This won't be the last time they'll appear on this iceberg either. Sonic CD is the sequel to Sonic the Hedgehog for the Sega CD add-on. It came out to glowing acclaim and introduced two character mainstays, Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. Sonic CD has some of the most interesting music in the whole series, taking full advantage of the hardware of the time, but had regional variances for one reason or another. This is also the first Sonic game to have a story that was told mostly on screen. It starts with a hand-drawn intro that shows a small planet that has appeared over a lake. This planet, just called Little Planet, appears over the lake for a single month each year. It is home to 7 magical stones called the Time Stones. Eggman has trapped the planet in metal and chained it down. Sonic then runs up the chains to stop Eggman. The story is straightforward and adds a few new characters, namely Amy Rose and Metal Sonic. These do play a big part in the story, but they won't be the main focus of today. Instead, we're going to discuss a mechanic available in the game: time travel. In Sonic CD, to get a good ending, you need to go back to the past of each of the levels and destroy Eggman's robot transporter. If you do this, then you get a good future for that level. The levels always start you in the present, and it is up to you to go to the past and fix it before the third act of the level. The third act of the level takes you to the future for that area. If you are able to save the past, then the future is bright. But if you fail to go to the past, well, then you'll end up in a bad future. This is where the dark lore comes from. The bad futures, which you could never see on a playthrough, are terrorized and roboticized locations. The animals have been taken hostage or eliminated, and the world is overrun by Eggman. Each of these worlds has its own set of dystopian futures. Each one has a new darker theme to accompany it. The music was changed between the Japanese release and the American one. The songs are both good in their own ways. It's just crazy to see that the future might hold if Sonic were to fail his mission. The Last of Us is a zombie survival game from Sony. Well, it's more like a story game that just happens to have zombies in it. Instead, the game mainly focuses on the human side of a zombie apocalypse story. Like many zombie games of recent years, they've tried to set their zombies apart from others. There are the infected zombies, the back from the dead zombies, but these are the fungal infection zombies. The zombies in The Last of Us were created from a strain of cordyceps fungus that contaminated produce in Central America. This strain is the same that infects ants in reality. This version was able to transfer to humans through the contaminated produce, though. The infection is a quick-acting but slow process. First, the infected individual will start to show signs 2 days after infection. This first stage takes away their higher cognitive abilities, such as reasoning and critical thinking. It also makes them angry and violent. The person at this point is still alive. The second stage takes place a few weeks after the infection. In this stage, the infected will start to lose some of their eyesight, as the fungus spreads to their eyes. They can see, but hardly. Their cognitive thinking is hampered more in this stage. This takes the infection into stage 3, which comes a year after infection. The infected have their face covered by the fungus at this stage. They also go completely blind. This gives them a primitive form of echolocation and hyperaggression. The person inside is mostly dead by this point, but not entirely. Stage 4 takes place over 10 years, but hardly any infected make it that far. The fungus will kill its host finally and produce tendrils from its host's body. These will explode and release spores that will infect the next host. Body horror is one of my favorite types of horror, and the infected in The Last of Us are some of the scariest. The worst part, though, is how long the person is conscious during their descent into full zombification. Halo is a beloved franchise that started life on the original Xbox console. It's a first-person shooter set against the backdrop of a sci-fi world. Halo was a game instrumental in crafting the world of online multiplayer games, and created a multimedia franchise that is still receiving entries to this day. What Halo's biggest strong suit is, besides its frantic and fun gameplay, is the world that it's crafted. More than that is the lore it created. You see, when you first start up Halo, it sets you up in a story about a galactic war taking place between humans and a faction called the Covenant, which is still what is happening in the game. Just about halfway through, though, there is something strange thrown into the mix. Master Chief, while looking for a downed Pelican aircraft, follows a trail of carnage into a new area. Master Chief starts to notice that the carnage shows both sides, humans and Covenant soldiers. It all leads to one man, barely alive, who seems to be going mad. There are several hints to what is happening here. Each one is painted very well into the story. Your radar, which moments ago was flashing with blue ally signals, now is empty as they are mysteriously taken away one at a time. You see sights of Covenant and human soldiers who look to have been fighting something besides each other. It all culminates with the video feed that Master Chief finds on the body of a dead human soldier. The feed shows a disgusting looking entity that attacks the team. Just as Chief pulls out of the feed, your entire radar goes red with enemies. You are surrounded and now encounter the true enemy of the game, the Flood. Here the game takes a turn from the sci-fi war game into a space zombie thriller. The Flood are creatures with more lore and backstory that I can go into for this video. It could very well make a series all its own, and it already has all over YouTube. Most of the lore comes from the many books within the Halo series and the subsequent games. Instead, let's focus on the first game with some story bits from the books to flesh out the game. The Flood are a race of parasites that operate under a united urge to infect and assimilate all sentient life forms. Once enough life forms have been assimilated and they have the chance to age, grow, and learn, they create what is called a grave mind. A grave mind is like a hive main center that can now coordinate all Flood life forms and takes the next step in its very quick evolution. I know that this is a lot of information to take in, but it is essential to know before we talk about the disturbing lore piece hidden in the game. The Flood are parasites that will attack humans and rip away at their armor and clothing until they reach skin. From there, they start to burrow into the human, spreading their tendrils throughout the body. This is the assimilation strategy that they use for all life forms that they infect. During this process, the life form is kept alive by the Flood. They isolate the brain and keep it active so as not to kill the rest of the body's functions. They need the body, stealing calcium and other nutrients from them. Further mutation follows this quick mutation. The person is likely still alive during this assimilation period. But there are other ways that the Flood likes to assimilate their victims. They can also assimilate them through spores. These spores will stay dormant for as long as they need to multiply within the infected individual. When they are ready, they start their attack on the brain. Slowly they sap away their memories and other cognitive functions. They do so until they can turn them into a fully infected Flood form. In most cases, the infected don't even know what they are. The most disturbing transformation of a person into a Flood happens with Captain Keyes in the first Halo game. He and his crew were the ones that were attacked by the Flood on the helmet camera that Chief saw. The Flood killed or assimilated almost everyone. The one who was taken and deemed the most important was Captain Keyes. The Flood invaded his mind. The parasite was looking for something within his memory. They wanted to know the location of Earth so they could start their assimilation of the planet. Keyes, who knew he was being targeted by the parasites, fought it off for as long as he could, even as his body and mind were mutated into a proto-grave mind. He would feed them memories and knowledge that wasn't vital to the survival of the human race, such as his name and his rank and other past history. By the time Chief arrives, the captain is almost entirely dead. Drained of his memories and tortured by the Flood in order for them to acquire the intelligence he refuses to give them. The captain's body, along with the bodies of other assimilated life forms, has become this giant biomass of carnage. Chief does the right thing and kills Keyes, effectively taking out the grave mind with him. The entire backstory of what is happening in Keyes' mind is covered in a book. It doesn't actually appear in the game, but I really wished it had. The visual storytelling of the design of the creature is enough to spark interest in this parasitic entity. The Flood has so much lore that I just couldn't cover it all here. They are not just another zombie infection, but instead a parasite that zombifies their host in a way that keeps them alive. Halo understands the power of creating horrific lore to accompany your space war game. Dredge is an indie game released in 2023. It's a fishing horror game that fully utilizes its premise, with a horrific set of locations to explore in the ocean. The whole world that you can explore has been corrupted by some unknown vile entity that tinges on the horrors of the corruption of normality. It is, in a sense, Lovecraftian horror. I'm going to do my best not to spoil the entire game, but there will be small spoilers, so you have been warned. The story of Dredge is told through interactions with NPCs, notes you find, and the items that you can dredge up. You play as a fisherman who loses his ship at the start of the game. From here you end up in a town called Greater Morrow, a fishing town. The town's mayor believes you to be the fisherman that the town hired, and you are given a boat and access to the waters. Given isn't really the right word, as you have to catch fish to pay off the debt for the boat. From here the game launches you into the unknown. You can fish all you want, catching as many fish as your boat can carry. During the day, it's easy. You catch a few fish, float back to town, sell the fish, and continue back into the waters. But there's more than meets the eye. You are directly told to be careful fishing at night, so you decide to do a little night fishing. After purchasing an attachable light to your boat, and you start to pull up grotesque-looking fish. These are the fish tainted by the deep. They writhe, have extra eyes or fins, and some now have gnashing teeth. The designs for these tainted fish are extra grotesque, and the sound that plays when you catch one adds to the wrongness of it all. These look like fish that have touched the void, and returned but not the same as they were before. Traveling anywhere in the world at night shows you the otherworldly fog that envelops the isles that you now call home. There are whispers on the wind, a faint purple outline of who knows what, and eyes that appear to be gazing upon you. This is disturbing world building to the max, but the actual lore here is just as interesting. The world exists between phases. A phase where humanity flourishes, and a phase where monstrous forces take over. These are called Sky and Deep respectively. An event has led to a mixing of the two phases. The Deep is appearing closer and closer to humanity. Some are going mad due to the consumption of the deep-tainted fish, while others are from the forces that appear at night. A devil hangs in the seas, and the world is crowded by darkness. This is as far as I can go into the story without going into spoilers. The story is told to you in a way that many horror games and the Souls games are. You have to pay attention to the environment, the dialogue, and the notes that you obtain. Only throughout those elements can you truly appreciate the world that is presented to you. Dredge is currently on sale, and I highly recommend everyone to go check it out if you haven't already. A game I haven't had the chance to talk about in all my years on YouTube, but one of my favorites of all time, is The Legend of Dragoon. Legend of Dragoon is a PS1 JRPG that was released in 1999, the year that the PS2 was released. Due to this and a few other factors, the game flew under the radar and would subsequently become a cult classic. The game is mostly high fantasy about dragons, demons, and a war. It does have a few moments that hint at the world and how it came to be. The two biggest pieces of lore that follow the story unfolding are the moon that never sets and the divine tree. The former hides a dark secret, and the other is the source of all life in the world of the game. It is believed in the world of Endiness, the setting of the game, that a god named Soa planted the divine tree, which bore 108 fruits that would become the different species on the earth. According to legends being told all across the game, the final fruit, 108, created the Virage embryo, which was created to destroy the world so that it could be rebuilt anew. This fruit was also called the God of Destruction. Before the events of the game, the Winglies, which are a magical species who had control of the Earth at the time, their dictator had learned about how the 108th fruit was created to end all life on the planet to start it over. He found a way to remove the soul from the final seed and separate the two, creating the moon that never sets and the moon child. The moon that never sets is a giant embryo that floats above the Earth at all times. It holds the God of Destruction inside. The soul of this god wandered the earth before picking a child to carry its soul, turning them into the Moonchild. The Moonchild was destined to reunite with the god and bring about the end of life. This is told through legends throughout the game and is one of the main story elements in the game. As Shauna, one of your party members and the MC's love interest, is the Moonchild. She doesn't know it yet, but she will bring about the end of the world. This legend directly leads to another with the creation of the Black Monster. The Black Monster is a Dragoon who kills people and children who are suspected of being the Moonchild. While well-intentioned as their deaths stop the end of the world, to heal more than just the one child. This role is filled by another party member, who I won't spoil, but it's kind of obvious, who has been killing for 11,000 years and carries great guilt because of it. This is the lore of Legend of Dragoon, a game that deserved more than what it got. If a game ever needed a remake, this is the one. This story, the lore created around the real-world religions, and the blend of a fully fleshed-out world and characters will be perfect for a modern audience.